Well, today we have Holly for this short series on sharing stories from abuse to triumph. And Holly, welcome. Thank you very much for being for agreeing to share your story here and to help other people and inspire everyone. Can you tell everyone who's watching this, just tell us a little bit about who Holly is, and then we'll share more about your story. What is it that you do
Sure.
today?
Sure. I am a poet, in case you didn't know it. My poet name is Holly Dresson, not Holly Dress Off. And I forgot who I was. I'd been writing poetry ever since I was a little girl, and I became a mom in my 20s. Had all four of my children in my 20s. Worked my tushy off in my 30s. And once I reached my 40s, I was like, wait a second, there's just so much more to life. What can I do to be better to myself as a woman, as a mother, and how can I help others move forward? So my message is hashtag, you can find it on social media, is pause, reflect, move forward. And it really just speaks about people that are dealing with anxiety or depression from any aspect of their life. Mine just happened to be from moving forward from a relationship that I had with someone for 29 years. I believe so much in the message. I tattooed it on my arm. And I can't wait to see what happens next in my life. I've 9 months ago, if you would have talked to me, I was in a very interesting place. I decided that the mental abuse was just enough. Back and forth with a relationship for almost 4 years, in and out of a divorce attorneys, and being kicked out of my house, moving out of my house, saying I've had enough. But then how do you leave your 4 children? And mothers don't leave their children. And I did, and 2 of them are very proud of me. My older children are proud of me that I moved forward and said, you know what, enough is enough. And my other 2 don't understand, and I believe are being told different stories than what the truth is. And today's actually 274 days that I've not spoken to my younger 2 children, and it's mourning the loss of 2 children that are alive is definitely a challenge. And I found myself without health insurance, and I live in the United States. And so during this process, I mean, obviously there's a lot of the story that I'm not telling because there's so many things to fill in, but the gist of it is at one point I lost my health insurance, and I couldn't, I didn't have the opportunity to go get an antidepressant or to talk with therapists. The opportunity for me wasn't there. And so I decided to start self-medicating, and I knew alcohol wasn't good for me. I knew that the answers weren't at the bottom of a bottle. And the antidepressants, I had them at one point, but they made me lose my smile. So I didn't even go towards that, in that direction. And so then I started smoking marijuana at 41. Who does that? I did. And I found out very quickly within less than a year of using it that it just added to my anxiety. So I had to figure out how to take care of Holly and whatever that looked like. So one of the things that I did was I left the abusive environment that I was in. And women, hopefully in our 40s, we've heard these memes, these sayings, these cliches of you can't heal in the same environment that you were broken in. So I picked myself up and I had the courage. I was like, this is it. Then I never expected the unexpected. And so it's been a challenge, to say the very least. And I actually, we spoke earlier, and that I chose this day to talk because tomorrow is a very important court date for me. And because I could have called and canceled, right? I could have said, you know what, this isn't the day. But it's so important for me to move forward, because if I didn't do this, what would I be doing? Because I was already starting to, I have this saying, to mind F myself, right? I was already starting to, listen to all those voices in my head. And I said, you know what, it's important to listen to that soft voice that's saying, you can do this, and decipher what those loud voices are and the soft voices are. Really make sense of it.
Hmm. So, Holly, let me ask you, when you said you were in a relationship for 29 years and it was abusive and it got to the point where you said, enough is enough, I can't take any more of this. Do you recall a time when all of a sudden you realized that it was abuse? Like, at what point did you realize that this was an abusive situation? Did you always know from the beginning, or did something happen overnight? Like, what opened your eyes?
I got in different environments, and I would hear these people talking, and they're saying that they believed in me, and I was just like, you what? You believe in me? What does that mean? And I didn't know what the word narcissism was until I had already spoken and hired an attorney. I was like, narcissistic abuse? What is that? And so I was told that I was the narcissist, to have that story flipped on me. And so, for gosh, I mean, it really started, my change happened when I guess I was about 35 years old. I went through a complete hysterectomy. Everything in my life changed. Everything, every aspect, every choice that I made. And then I started hanging out with different people that saw something more than what was within their four walls of their home or in their four walls of their job. I never believed in, getting up in the morning and doing the same thing every day and then going to bed and getting up and doing it all over again. I mean, there's got to be more to life than this. And so I started to spread my wings, if you will, at 40. I grew up, my mother was unfortunately morbidly obese for her entire life. And my dad I grew up in alcoholism family. Alcohol's been a big problem in my life. And not my life particularly, just in my surroundings. And I was just like, you know what, I there's got to be more than this. And I started reading and listening and paying attention and listening to the sound of the silence, that, to go outside in nature and just be who it was that I was supposed to be all along. And I was just, going through the motions of being a mom and being a wife and having, cleaning or taking care of the kids all day. And when my husband would come home, the house would be clean. I don't even think he ever knew that it was dirty, which I let the kids tear the house apart because I believe in having an imagination. They never watched TV. They always had organic foods and, the exercise and, just all of these things. I thought I was being a great mom, but unfortunately, all four of my children ended up being bullied at school. And I couldn't understand, why are you not standing up for yourself? I didn't say that to them, but of course, I'm like, why are they not standing up for myself? Well, fast forwarding and now looking back, they couldn't stand up for themselves because I didn't know. I wasn't teaching them that. So he would come home and the house would be clean and dinner would be on the table and the beer would be at his side. And I'd say, I got to go to bed, and I'd go to bed, and he'd sleep on the couch for 15 years. So what do you do? I cried a lot. I cried, and I was never brought up with my faith. My mother was an atheist. She didn't start learning about heaven and earth until her mom died, and I was in my 20s. I didn't find my faith until my 30s. So I had to reprogram my brain to think that, okay, this is positive. And, and the amazing thing about this whole experience is that the blessing in this burden that I've bared, because I believe that, looking back now, that I had these choices. I chose to stay. What I allowed continued, But the blessing in this burden is that I found my faith. And I pray for my kids every single night before I go to bed. But the thing is I also pray for him too. And I had that conversation with him. And I told him that I prayed for him. And he said to me, why? And I looked at him like bewildered. Like, what do you mean, why? Why would I pray for you? Because you're the father of my children. And we need to learn how to co-parent. I made him not better, apparently, and he didn't make me any better. So, but it's important that we don't allow history to repeat itself. As challenging as working on yourself is, it's really the most rewarding thing. I can't even begin to tell you how proud of myself I am. And some days are better than others, right? Like everybody else, some days are better than others. But through this whole thing, it's okay if I talk about what I did to get better, right? I wrote poetry. I write to get me right, because at that time I'm able to decipher the voices. I'm able to write down what Holly thinks, not what the voices are telling me to do, the good, the bad, the ugly, And I decided to write a book about it. I went on a 30-day journey because I was like, I needed to get over my husband. I needed to get over him. And God, I couldn't get over him. I didn't know how to. But I stood up there every night and I said that I was gonna. I'm gonna. And I didn't. But so what I did is I wrote a book called 30 Different Microphones in 30 Days, right? It's on Amazon. And I wrote poetry that morning, and then I read it in the evening at different open mics or events or things around the country. And gosh, I had so much fun. And then I was like, I ended up back in his arms. How does that happen?
Oh, it happens very often. That is very common.
Right, but so I started doing that more self-reflection. That pause, reflect, move forward to me means I needed to take some time for me to reflect on why it is that I allowed what I allowed for so long to finally move forward, right? So one of my oldest friends, she told me, well, you need to do another round of 30 different mics. And I'm going, are you crazy? Because do you know how much work that is? And so I did. And then I geared it towards anybody who was dealing with anxiety or depression. And through this whole thing, I was diagnosed, from the back and forth of the relationship with my husband and my family, just not knowing what was going on. I was diagnosed bipolar. So I wore that idea of bipolar for a little while. And then I started reading and learning, and then realizing that I wasn't the only one that had voices in my head, so this is just something that they told me that I had, but it isn't who I am. It's just something that they told me that I had. And so I ended up writing a second book called Welcome to My Bipolar Mind, because that's where I was at the time, right? I mean, as an artist, as a performer, you write about what you're going through, because that's where the vulnerability and the passion and all those things come through. But the difference between these books, though, is the first one I was high as a kite. And the second one, I was completely sober. No alcohol, no drugs, no antidepressants, and at one point, no caffeine. Because I didn't have any health insurance, like I was saying before. I stripped myself down. I felt all the feels in order to heal. And I talk in rhyme most of the time, so it's just one of those
Oh, I
things.
love it. I love it. I like that.
And I don't apologize for it anymore. I used to apologize for it. But, life's entirely too short to be miserable. If you're going through something, go through it. Grow through it. Don't feel, I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to look in the mirror every day and be like, really, is this all there is to life? It really is a choice. You have a voice. You must use it, because otherwise you're choosing to be everything that society and whoever else is telling you to not do certain things. I mean, I'm a poet. How many poets do you know in life, at this point of our lives? I mean, there's several, historical poets that are in society, but you don't hear that very often. So me wearing the fact that I was a poet and an entertainer, I just didn't understand what that was when people started calling me that. I was just Holly. I was a wife and a mom, but there's so much more to us than people just don't know. You never know what people are going through, and having compassion for others is so important, because typically, the ones that are smiling the most are the ones that are hurting the most. And I'm hurting from time to time, but I'm so much happier.
Hmm.
I'm so much more at peace. And um and I know, like I said, I'm going through parent alienation now, but I tell myself every day, like, I see the day of how many days it is, 274 days today, but I'm also one day closer. I'm one day closer. Yeah, it sucks. My reality sucks right now, but my current situation is not my final destination. And I tell myself all the time. And as women, it's important to hold on to the ones that appear to know what it is that they're doing, because some of us are just making it up as we go, right? Hold on to those women, because we're better together. We're better together. And thank you so much for doing what you're doing to help others move forward in life, because it's important that we get it right.
Oh, totally. And you know what, Holly, I just want to go back to something you said earlier. You said your children were getting bullied at school and you couldn't figure out why. And then you realized, well, you were not setting the example. But I want to just kind of highlight that now you are. So even though your two children are not talking to you right now, I strongly believe that one day they will reconnect with you and they will say, my mom, she had so much courage, because it takes a lot of courage for mom to to go through what you went through, right? You left your four kids at first, you went through that whole ordeal, and as children, usually in these situations, as it usually happens, they get confused and they don't know who to side with. They don't want to take sides, and sometimes they do. So, hang strong to that, because you are setting that example. You may not have said it then,
Mm-hmm.
but you are setting it now. So you are making a difference, in that regard. So I hope you
Yeah.
realize that
No,
now.
no, I do now. And I've been homeless for 9 months. I've not shared that with anybody publicly, and it's actually 9 months today. Um, and I tell you, if you think you can't, you won't. But if you think you can, that little remote possibility, you have to hold on to that, because it's easier to be negative in a negative situation. It's more of a challenge to be positive in a negative situation. And I'm all about a challenge. And I challenge you to be positive in a negative situation, because you know what? Once you pause, once you reflect, you'll be able to move forward. But what happens once you do move forward, you end up having to pause yet again to reflect on where it is you're going to next. It's a circle of life. We must keep going. We must keep evolving, because I would much rather endure this than any one of my children. I cannot allow history to repeat itself.
And you're such a great example. Thank you for sharing. That's a very vulnerable place to be in, and to have the courage to share that. I've been homeless, so I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Uh, if I can say
But
anything,
my hair
as
still looks good.
your hair looks awesome, and the thing is, as you said,
Yeah,
this is just a transition, right?
yep,
It's not going to be like this forever.
that's right.
So okay, so you are still going through a lot of tough time. You're dealing with courts and all that stuff. So just one last question. If you had someone in front of you right now who it's just somebody who's watching this right now, is in the exact same situation you were at just before you left the relationship. Okay, not before you recognized abuse, but the point where you were just about to leave. What one or two or three tips or suggestions based on your own personal experience, what would you tell them now? What would you tell Holly now if you were talking to Holly back then?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was fortunate enough. I mean, at the time, I didn't think so, but I was fortunate enough to have my own room. I slept by myself in our family home. And I made a decision and started planning. I started saying, you know what are some of the things that I'm going to need that make Holly better? One of the things I took is I love boiled eggs. I have this little boiled egg maker, right? So I took that. I was like, I have to have that, and I have to have my essential oils. I have to have things that make Holly better, and my clothes. I had to have my clothes. There's no way I was not leaving with my clothes, right? But I had to have the things that made Holly better. And what made Holly better was making sure I had birth certificates, any type of document, my social security card. I had food for a week in case I needed. I had my cereal bars. I stuffed those away. My shampoos. I'm all about my organic and non-toxic stuff to use on my skin, because that's what makes Holly better, right? So I put all those things aside, and I have the grace of God helped me, and some very good, very close friends of mine helped me move forward. And and once you go through that type of abuse, the receiving end is very much a challenge. Of people are just so graceful. They're like, of course you can sleep on my couch. Of course you can sleep on my air mattress. Of course, get up here. So I've been traveling the country for the last 9 months, staying at friends and family's houses, because that's all I've had. And you know what? I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so blessed. This led me to my faith. I pray every night before I go to bed. At one point, I was praying more than I was breathing, and I've learned that to make choices not based on my bank account, right? To say, you know what, God's not looking to see how much is in your bank account. He wants to see how faithful you are, and I'm faithful.
I have a question for
Uh-oh.
you.
Uh-oh.
Well, I don't know how you're going to take it, but if the two children who you have now been speaking to are watching this, what would you like to say to them?
Oh my goodness. You're not supposed to do that.
Oh, yes, I am.
Oh, you know what? I love them so much, and love is, sorry, I bumped my camera. Love is about forgiving and forgiveness, and it is the most unconditional love I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I almost feel like I took advantage of the time that I had with you guys. I didn't appreciate you enough, and I'm so proud of you, because you're standing up for something that you believe is right, because that's what mommy taught you. Mommy taught you to stand up for what you believe is right. And I forgive you for slamming the door in my face when I came to see you, and I forgive you for turning around when I came to see you and walking the other way. I'm so proud of you, and just keeping you no matter what anybody tells you, because you matter, your voice matters, your thoughts matter, your ideas matter. And you're not supposed to do that to me, Francesca.
Well, I think it's important that
Yeah.
if they are watching this, that they know, and that they don't just see mom. Mom is a poet. Mom's got her own life now. Mom has her own challenge. Because there are these voices that most likely are going through their heads. I don't know what's going through their heads, but it is possible that they're thinking, mom made her choice. Finding herself is more important than us. Who knows what goes through their heads? And I think it's important that they hear it from you versus trying to figure it out on their own, or from hearing it from other people.
And thank you so much for asking that question, because I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for society. There needs to be more love in the world and less hate. And if we continue pointing the finger at everybody else, then how's that helping anybody? We're all responsible for ourselves. And if you can't take responsibility for yourself, then you're always going to put the blame and point the finger. Then how are we ever supposed to evolve and become better humans? Uh, my children are watching me. My two oldest ones, they tell me how proud of me all the time that they are. And I still feel, I could be doing better, but don't give up. You can't give up hope, because all else is madness, and it leads to sadness, and there's just no time for that anymore. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I know I said it was one last question, but I have one more. Please, that's me.
What you got, woman? What you got?
You don't have to have the answer, but it's just because the whole purpose of this series is not only to share stories of people who have gone through abusive situations where they've gotten out safely, but also to help spread a message of how do we prevent ourselves from getting into those situations in the first place.
Oh yeah.
So just this is really the last question. Looking back at the relationship you were in for 29 years, whether your ex-husband was a good guy or a bad guy, it doesn't matter. What, now that you look back and you know about narcissistic abuse and you understand that more fully, what would you tell a young person to look for in a relationship? What are the red flags that you suggest to look for in a relationship so that they don't get into it too deep without proceeding with caution and really investigating, is this a red flag or is just a one-off kind of thing?
One of the first things that I was told was, now when I met him, I was 16 years old. I had long blonde hair. He told me to never cut my hair. If I did, he would break up with me.
There you go. Red flag.
Red flag.
Red flag.
You notice how short my hair is now, right?
And it's black.
Yeah. And well, this is my natural, actually.
Okay.
But if somebody tells you they love you sooner than you think they should, well, how do you know you love me? You don't know me. How do you know? Taking over certain situations where you feel that you are in charge of or in control of, and they start making decisions for you, and then questioning why it is you're doing what you're doing. Not listening to your opinions, turning every conversation into an argument instead of a discussion. I mean, I can keep going. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's plenty. We don't want to, those are good red flags to look for early on.
But the green flags, like, we need to be talking about the green flags. Don't you think? The green flag of the compliments, appreciation, consideration, compassion. Those are things we need to look for in people, and not base our decisions based upon what somebody looks like. Instead of judging the book by the cover, actually get the opportunity to know someone for who they are, not what it is they look like. Because the devil comes dressed in many disguises. And as much as I've been through, I can still say that I love him. I pray for him. He's the father of my children, and I hope he finds peace, because I have.
Cool. Holly, you're
Yeah.
you're a joy to talk to.
Thank you.
I'm sorry you got emotional there for you.
That's okay.
It's tough because we go through those phases. So anyone watching this, if you're in a situation where you're not sure whether to stay or leave, my opinion is always, if you're staying in an abusive situation because of the children, then you must leave because of the children, because you're not setting a good example. You're teaching the children that it's okay to abuse and it's okay to receive the abuse, and breaking that cycle starts with us now. Like, we need to end this. This has to end.
We need to pause and do the self-reflection so we can move forward. But the most challenging part of it is the moving forward process. And then the healing, forget it. It's ugly. It is not all yoga and
no, it's not.
And butterflies hanging around your head. pulling your hair out, no makeup, and if you haven't put your makeup on, you need to put your makeup on. Whatever it is that makes you feel better, go do it. If it means going for a run, if it means going for a walk, which I highly recommend because it's the least expensive antidepressant, and it gets those endorphins going. So go for a walk and
Yeah.
pause, reflect, move forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And please follow Holly. She's got 2 amazing books. I have both books, and they're funny. They have a lot of depth. So yeah, they're totally worth having. So go read the books. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Holly, and for your hashtag pause, reflect, and move forward. And with that, uh, hopefully you will do the same.
Thank you so much, and God bless, and hashtag pause, reflect, move forward.